All right. Kicking it off. It's Sunday. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Yeah, it's been an interesting week and an even more interesting 24 hours, I'd say. Lots of thoughts around recent happenings. I mean, I really want to dive into the show. I don't want to go on too long at the top of the show here, but um, I interviewed Dr. Leemon Baird with King Solomon. That was epic. And there were a ton of really great updates from across the ecosystem on all fronts. And then today, I was on Twitter and I can't remember who brought it to my attention that the mainnet was running at 1 transaction per second. And I don't know if it still is. We're going to talk about this today, but I just wanted to it's kind of top of mind, I think, for everybody. Yeah, so 1 transaction per second. So we'll talk about it, but talk about um, a crazy week. Um, in the same week that, I got to chat with kind of Leemon and ask him questions for the first time, the network dipped down to 1 transaction per second. It's wild. But I don't think it's doom and gloom. I don't think that there needs to be any kind of fear or uncertainty or doubt. I think it may, in fact, just be a little blip and maybe a sign of what's to come. Who knows? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. We got a bunch of really cool stuff going on too. What else we got going on this week? Mance, so the other co-founder of Hedera, co-CEO of Swirled Labs, sent a nice message to the community with what I think could be maybe some kind of hidden wink or something like that. I don't know. Leemon also gave a talk at the Proof of Talk, I guess, conference or whatever it was. It was really interesting. I'm always interested when I see Leemon on a panel with other people. It's very... It reframes a lot of stuff about Leemon, which I'll touch on a little bit. We got update from Christian Hasker. We have a kind of a very cool teaser from Saucer Swap. I think we know what it's about. Updates from HBAR Suite. Updates from the NFT ecosystem. Updates from HashPack, wallet stuff, DEX stuff. We're going to touch on some of the things that were brought up in regards to access. If any OG NFT barbarians are out there, you'll know what I'm talking about. Aberdeen, governing council member, rocking on the mainnet. Coinbase featured a Hedera use case, which was very cool. Some breadcrumbs, some of this, some of that. You know what's going on. And we're live on Twitter Spaces with another week in Hashgraph to unpack. And I think we got a lot going on. I mean, with that, good evening from Ottawa, Canada, everyone. My name is Brandon Davenport, and I'm a creative developer, musician, and founder at my creative firm, Dirksen Davenport Inc., helping artists, businesses, and startups in the Hedera ecosystem. And like all of you, I'm a Hashgraph enthusiast. What day is it today? It is Sunday, June 18th. And this is a weekly show. We cover the top stories related to Hedera, HBAR, and everything in between. Broadcast live on Twitter Spaces every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and made available on all major podcast platforms, including, but not limited to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, I think Google Podcasts, all sorts of other stuff. Those go up every Monday. Get all the info you need about the show and listen to past episodes at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. If you're listening live right now, check out the Twitter thread pinned to the top of the Spaces. Take a deeper dive into each of the stories. Do what you got to do. Also, everybody listening live, take a moment now to share the Spaces. Let your friends know you're listening. The more, the merrier. You can also click the little comment button at that bottom right of the Spaces. Ask a question. Share something interesting that people might like to know, and I will talk about it on the show. I'm keeping an eye on it. So, what do we got going on? Oh yeah, something else that's awesome is the show continues to get donations from the community, which is awesome. I'm pretty much right at the goal. I got to get the new audio setup here. So I've got one piece, got to get a couple other things, but soon things are going to start sounding a lot better. My hope is to be starting to play like some clips of recordings from things that are in the news, all those different stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that. It'll make my job easier. It'll make the podcast a lot better. And it's all possible because of listeners like you. If you are interested in becoming a supporter of the show, please consider making an HBAR donation. Helps me continually add value to the Hashgraph community and keeps the show ad-free. You can send a donation to enthusiast.hbar using your Hedera wallet. The full HBAR address can be found in the Twitter thread pinned to the top. And a reminder too, join the Hashgraph Enthusiast Twitter community. Great place to kind of share news, insights, all that good stuff. Check it out. You know what to do. So I want to talk about two things, and then we'll dive into the Reddit report. But like I said, happy Father's Day, everybody, all the dads out there. I see a couple dads listening. Shout out to all of you guys. Hopefully you all got some time to relax, unwind. But I do want to just dive into two things. So the first thing I want to dive into is a little bit of a recap on the Leemon interview. And I know that King Solomon, I know you're tuning in. Feel free to jump up if you want to chime in on this, but we had a lot of interesting insights that we chatted on with Leemon. I had a chance finally to kind of re-listen to it because my goal was like, what exactly did we talk about? Because it was kind of a blur. Like, what exactly did we kind of talk about? And I took a moment too to see what conversations were happening in the community, kind of ripples from that interview. There were a couple really interesting things. But I made a couple notes as if I was like listening to it. That stuck out as interesting to me. But King Solomon, good to have you. I was curious, like just coming off of that Leemon interview, I had a chance to go and re-listen to it again. I don't know if kind of the days after that, if anything kind of popped into your head or any kind of insights or takeaways that you inferred from that conversation. Because in the moment as it was happening, I wasn't like absorbing everything properly,
Yeah, no, I mean, when you asked what questions, like we had to put together a pretty big topical list of questions, like, and send them over. Just like anytime you interview somebody like that, that'd be like the same thing if you interviewed Brad Garlinghouse or whoever you interviewed. Like, they always ask for questions in advance, or at least topics in advance. So I know that you and I had liaised, talking about kind of the flow and all those other aspects. You did a great job, though, by the way, dude. Like, because I know we had a shit ton of topics there to get through, and you pivoted really nicely, like based on the way the conversation was already going and what question you wanted to ask. And then I know that we were both on our own sides having to keep track of which questions were asked and which questions weren't asked and where to go. Yeah, so fantastic job on that, dude, because not a lot of people could kind of do that off the cuff. What's interesting for me is, like, when we started, the whole breadth of the entire interview was great. I really liked that last 25 minutes or so when the question about how do we envision these technologies converging kind of came about, because you don't really normally hear or get to pick Leemon's brain from, like, outside of just everything going on succinctly within Hedera, and the internet of things, AI and zero knowledge proofs and stuff. And somebody caught, what's the guy's name? It starts with a B.
Was it Danny Eade?
Danny, sorry, it starts with D.
Yeah.
Danny caught that Leemon had mentioned the ZKP stuff, integrating in with state proofs and all that type of an aspect, which is like, you really do have to listen. If you ask broad questions and you ask enough questions, sometimes these OGs and these bigger players, or, the inventors or whatever, they drop little like nuggets of like information in there that are like 3 or 4 words long, but he caught that 100%. And that was really cool to see somebody catching, like, the other thing that was really cool that I mean, for me personally, is that we were talking, and it's kind of ironic now. I mean, we're seeing the mainnet at like 1 transaction per second, which is real transaction per second, which is probably more than's happening on some networks anyways. But when we talked about 1,000 or 10,000, I really liked when Leemon was getting into the, when we need to scale to 100,000 or 1 million transactions per second occurring in real time, or 1 billion. We can do that. We can do that through sharding and all the other aspects that are kind of involved. So I always like the forward thinking type stuff. So yeah. And again, that's just kind of what I got from it. But being so busy in this space as you are doing these, information, it's almost like once you do the interview, it's like people are like, what have you done for me lately? So like, what's the next thing? But I still think I'm probably going to go back and listen to Leemon again for that whole spaces and just listen to him talk and see if I miss anything.
100%. Like when you're doing interviews, especially with someone of that caliber and a lot of the people that you've interviewed, it's like, in my experience, sometimes it's like in the moment during the interview, you're kind of in that mode of like navigating the topic, stringing things together, having it be something enjoyable and listenable and smooth. And I mean, credit to Leemon too, like such a great interview, such a professional, like so great. I mean, credit to you as well, like just all of the different interviews that you've been doing with Genfinity and the way that you organize those things and including the community and stuff, like top notch. So I mean, like I had a blast. Like it was like being in the top of the top of it was fantastic. It would have been really difficult for me to screw it up. So I think that was great. But I mean, the real interview I feel sometimes happens when it's over and everybody else is kind of listening and picking it apart and finding those insights. It's like you just can't do in the moment. So it was like seeing that reflected back, I was like, oh wow. Like it was what you brought up with Danny Eade and Nick Vitero, I think commented on those things too. But just on that last portion of the interview that you highlighted, like the number one thing that stood out to me was like just a mic drop moment was when Leemon said, this is going to make the Industrial Revolution look like it was in slow motion, in reference to AI and kind of dropping that his background is in AI. And he's like, nah, like chatbot, blah, 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 whatever. Like we're talking robots that can mine, refine, manufacture, transport, do maintenance, send them out to Mars, build all the stuff for us. Like I was like, Jesus, man, like what are you not thinking about right now? And my favorite moment of the whole interview was after you were like, I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, dude. Well, because we ran out of topics and you know what? It was pretty crazy because we didn't we had an hour with him. And if you watch back on that interview, like we pretty much exactly did like 58 or 59 minutes. So like we 100%. Got everything asked. It was crazy. The other thing that I really have to go back and listen to is his thoughts around the CBDC aspects. And I hear I'm always interested in hearing synergy in thought from different people that have been there and done that in crypto, that have worked with governments, that have worked with like these legacy institutions that understand what's coming from CBDCs. Like Paolo Tasca and Leemon, they had a lot of synergy. If you go back and listen to both of those interviews, there's a lot of similar thought processes going on from Leemon and Paolo, talking about the ways CBDCs might interoperate with these public ledgers and these crypto assets. And I thought that was a really interesting portion that I want to go back in and dive into so I can actually kind of understand the lack of security aspects or anything else. Like if you start interoperating with DLT, you want to interoperate with DLTs that are secure, that are fast, that are transparent, that are, X, Y, and Z, that are cheap. So I want to go back and listen to that portion again too.
Yeah. I mean, I did go back and listen to it, and I actually pulled a couple quotes from this that I found really interesting. I think you might find interesting too. I'm just going to read them here. Just a couple of things. Leemon does such a great job of kind of unpacking some of these concepts. So just a couple quotes from him on that topic was he said, quote, I can speculate on what a CBDC might look like. The U.S. has the Federal Reserve, which is a set of banks with databases, computers that hold almost all the money in the country. The other money is paper. So your checking account is not holding dollars, it's holding IOUs. Your bank has an account at the Federal Reserve with a reserve requirement of a currently, and he chuckles, whopping 0%. So he says, America has a kind of CBDC, which is a cluster of banks, but it's also not a CBDC. Right now, it's really painful to build on/off ramps to crypto. You can't have a DEX that goes from crypto to dollars. If the country had a system that could interoperate with ledgers with wrapped dollars, things would be easy. They have server technologies in place. If a few computers go down, the system is okay. but they probably don't have the ability to survive one of their computers being hacked and becoming malicious. If they were using a ledger, they'd get all of that security for free. People say we already have a CBDC, why tamper with it? No. What we really need is ledgers with interoperability or state proofs and better security than a typical database. The current system seems to be safe enough. Why not make it safer? No country will build a CBDC on a public ledger. That would be silly. They wouldn't mint a token on Hedera for the US dollar. And then I think he just flippantly says they should talk to Swirlds Labs on providing guidance or something like that. But I was just just that right there, just so simple and so obvious, but painted that picture of yeah, that's probably what a CBDC is going to be like,
I totally agree. I mean, it was a similar thing that Paolo kind of said the same stuff whenever I got the chance to talk to him. And he was basically saying look, none of these banks are running massive dev shops that can stand up ledgers and ecosystems. So they're interoperating, whether that be a private version through a private permission ledger that is just for the banks or a public permission list, whatever it is. You start really kind of hearing that synergy between these people. What Leemon said that I thought was really interesting is wrapping national based fiat currencies and letting them interoperate with these kind of ledgers and ecosystems. It's a super common sense thing to say, but usually we think about USDC and all these other aspects, but normal fiat currencies they're already digitized, but there's going to be a DLT version of the United States dollar at some point in time. And it's probably going to be one of the last ones that comes out. These tier one nations are going to be much more kind of on the back end of this stuff, waiting for everybody else to do it and then just releasing it. But they're going to interoperate with the ledgers, some of the ledgers that we are already using and that we're already on. And his viewpoints on that stuff was really interesting to me.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, switching gears, one of the I think the big takeaways from that interview was the new insights regarding DREC, for those unfamiliar, decentralized recovery, extending to decentralized custody, basically using kind of the Shamir sharing kind of thing, but then also new components that kind of put a new spin on it. You have helpers that have parts of your secrets and your keys, and it's very, very slick. Definitely look into it. But for those familiar, there was some kind of new information that Leemon provided. And he basically said there's a demo, source code, an API, libraries, a website. There's also an RFC draft to make this an internet standard that doesn't require TLS because each message is independently encrypted. And basically the key takeaway was right now, they're putting together the big media splash to announce it to the world. There's no date yet, but it does sound like it's getting definitely to that soon area, whatever that is. And he even said behind the scenes, we're talking to other companies and even ledgers so that we can all do it together. It's not just a Hedera thing. This is something that our entire industry desperately needs. It's not about getting a bigger piece of the pie. It's about helping the pie grow. So kind of reflecting some of that language back at the community. And then, saying decentralized custody is coming after. So helpers can sign a transaction for you. And, he's mentioning other use cases, not just your crypto keys, but it could be services like 1Password or stuff like that. And it could work for identity. So if you have your kind of identity leveraging, again, zero knowledge proofs to, ID at the bar, and they don't have to know your exact age or see your photo. They just want to know if you're over a certain age. But if you lose your phone, this infrastructure can help you recover your identity. Maybe your helper for your ID is the government or something. I don't know. And apparently they're seeing a huge interest. And something that stuck out for me huge here was we hope it is built into operating systems like iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac. So having this be kind of a system level protocol would be huge. But I mean, that aside, my takeaway from that is, in regards to just an infrastructure play, I mean, this is huge for the overall crypto ecosystem, but as a almost branding marketing play for Hedera and Swirlds Labs and just visibility, talk about mass adoption, maybe there's a new pathway here. It's if you think about mass adoption and having HBAR available in all the exchanges and pumping it and getting these TPSs jacked up and all these kinds of things, or this kind of highly visible contribution to a huge pain point in the overall crypto ecosystem. Like, it's also very compelling just from that standpoint as well. So I don't know what your thoughts on the DREX stuff was, but I'm super, super excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I really like and I think that DREC conversation started from, I think the question started from the framework of even if it didn't, it kind of delves into like the shared worlds aspect.
Yeah.
And like diving into different ecosystems and chains and everything else, because at the end of the day, like there's a couple of really inherent problems for mass adoption in crypto. I know Leemon did mention, I think he mentioned first and foremost lack of regulatory clarity.
Yeah.
What did he mention? Did he mention second, security and kind of like?
No, I was like, oh, this is DREX really important. He's like, yeah, so I'd say number one is obviously regulatory stuff, like chuckling, and then he's like, number two is, not losing your private key.
Yeah, and that's totally, so that's totally what he's getting into here. And what I really like is like, the opportunity for Hedera to bridge out into these other ecosystems in ways that make sense through like a shared initiative of like mass adoption and security. And if that comes through DREC, and if that's the initiative that does it, that's fantastic, because at the end of the day, like, we need to see different ecosystems coming together. At the end, like, I look at, if you look at like Ethereum, I don't think is going anywhere necessarily. Who knows? But it's like EVM is so ingrained into so many different networks, so many different aspects, like, which I really kind of like was interested in the EVM equivalence aspects that we asked him about as well, where it's like, how do you bolster up the Hedera network, but also like integrate EVM in ways that make sense, but highlights what Hedera is doing. But from the security standpoint, it opens up the doors to have conversations with not only like different layer ones, but almost like if you get a couple, and you create that snowball effect for what DREC represents, you can essentially reach out to pretty much all those layer ones. And then if it's a standard within those layer ones, it almost like becomes a standard, obviously, for every project building on those layer ones. Like, and for us, like from the Genfinity purview, from my purview, I've been trying to do the cross-chain stuff forever. Like, it opens up the doors to start trying to reach out to these layer ones and saying, hey, do you want to get into a discussion with Hedera or Leemon or whoever it is around DREC and figure out if that works for your ecosystem, and look at what they built here. And I'm kind of just waiting for that initial rollout to try to like be like, this is really cool, and start sending emails out or DMs and stuff like that. You guys should look at that from this ecosystem standpoint, figure out how you guys can work together. Like, that's what I'm most interested in, is trying to bring these networks together. And I think this is the initiative that can do it, because everybody in every one of these ecosystems cares about, how do we make security better? How do we make custodianship better? And how do we make that user experience, when we do make it better, seamless for the user, so that we can onboard more people?
Oh, 100%. And not only is this a cross-chain thing, like, again, Leemon talking about passwords, or even like your government identity, or all those different types of processes that are really hard, where effectively you are using types of helpers already to verify who you are. Can that process be made more efficient? So like I think it's even more far reaching than that as well. So it's like, it's a really common pain point, a common conversation topic that is a great launching pad for like, can we get a little closer together? Can we go a little more cross-chain, cross-network kind of thing? Like, that's huge. And on the DREX stuff as well, Mei Chen, CEO of HashPack, put out a really interesting take on this. I
saw that. I was actually going to go there, and was wondering if you were going to mention that.
Go there, dude. What are your thoughts on it?
I love the HashPack guys. I love May. I love Jacob. I love Mark. All those guys are great. The way I read it is like, it comes down to user experience at the end of the day. But I do think that, like, if it's done correctly, and Leemon did kind of mention this as well, where it's like, you as a user don't necessarily have to be managing these things. You just have to have people that you can trust, and then everything kind of gets sent or pinged from cell phones or data or whatever it is on the back end, where you're not having to do that work to make sure that your helpers are still your helpers. It's just like kind of happening automatically. If that's the case, I totally get it, and I kind of I get where Leemon is going with this. But I get where May's going with this as well, because there's going to be a little bit of a road to build that functionality out to make it so automated and everything else. I can see both ends of the spectrum, but I like an idea like that because it does make it, it keeps it to like a trust-based network. Like, you know, and it doesn't have to be everybody in the trust pool, you know, that you totally have to depend on. So it's almost like a multi-sig, but just for your private key. And it's people that are friends or family, and it's automatically pinging them to make sure that they still have a portion, but nobody can see that portion. I really like the idea, but I get both ends of the spectrum. I don't know if I was even definitive in my response to what you asked me there, but I get what May's saying, but I also think I see a little bit of the bigger vision of what Leemon and the team behind DREC are trying to accomplish here.
100%. And I think too, like at the bare bones, like most people that use this product, you need a minimum of 3 people. It's like, it's going to be, you know, you're maybe a sibling, maybe your partner, and like you're like someone at work or something. Like it's, and that's going to be secure enough for most people. It's going to be better than having custody at an exchange, and it's going to be better than just holding on to their private key and a piece of paper in their home. You know, it's a spectrum of security, really. And also too, like, I think a piece of the DREC story that kind of gets, 2 pieces that kind of get glossed over is, one, if folks remember, I think it maybe was last year or the year prior, Mance said that I think it was in some interview or something where Mance said Leemon's made a new discovery that's just as important as the Hashgraph algorithm. I don't know if folks remember that. I remember like talking about it nonstop on the show, but like, I think that it turned out to be DREC. Like, I think that kind of light bulb moment, you could argue when you look really big picture with this, the ramifications are massive. And also a second thing was Leemon talking about helpers as a service, right? Like when you need these helpers, if you know, this propagates as far as we think it's going to propagate, like within crypto across Hedera, but across other networks, and then outside of that into all sorts of other different use cases leveraging the API. It could be businesses, governments, banks, whatever. Having helpers as a service, or whatever you want to call it, that specialize in kind of the shared decentralized custody or recovery of your assets, like that's going to be a whole new business model.
I just thought of a really great question that we didn't ask during that interview around DREC that we should have asked. And think about right now, not only from the security standpoint, what that represents, if it gains mass adoption and everything else. Think about one of the major problems that everybody that is in crypto right now faces that has like a family, right? So I have a wife, I have kids. My wife doesn't really know a whole lot about crypto. I'm in here day in, day out, like 12, 15 hours a day most of the time. And if something happened to me, she would totally, like, I have all everything written down. I've tried to show her how to do stuff. She'd be like lost and like a little bit screwed. Same thing with my kids. My kids are a little bit younger, so they don't really care about this stuff right now. They see what I'm doing. They understand the implications of it. But what that essentially does is if it's just an easy application or an easy service that you can use, it onboards more people into the crypto ecosystem, like just by having that application where it's like, hey, I need to put this on your phone, and our family is going to kind of have, you know, you guys are going to be my 4 helpers within our family, and you can go in, you can check and look at certain things within that, like a user interface aspect. I think it's a huge onboarding tool for crypto and Web3 as well, if it's done correctly. Like, that is actually going to reciprocate not only from the security standpoint for mass adoption, but from people starting to feel like they're responsible for us, for the people that are here, that are actually in this space every day, like, and that they're kind of helping us to make sure that our assets are safe. So that, because if our assets are safe and you have a family, then their assets are safe, and they start understanding how to use things. They get interested in learning more. I didn't even think about any of that stuff until like literally right now as you were talking. And I think that's a mass potential like use case to start onboarding more users, but just by having them be helpers.
100%. And it's even the word helper, like it's a very human approach to this. Like I was kind of surprised when he was talking about the DREC stuff initially and framing it as helpers. Like I was like, oh, this is very like wholesome sounding. And I think that's the approach that needs to be taken. It reminds me of referencing like kind of like Apple and Steve Jobs, like when they were doing that kind of new version of the iMac that was different colors and see-through and stuff, and they put a handle on the back of the computer, and it was kind of like, well, why are we putting a handle on a computer? Like, no, like they're going to put this on a desk. It's a desktop. And it's just about letting the customer know they're in control, that they can. Steve Jobs joked, he's like, we need them to know that they can pick it up and throw it out the window anytime they want. They need to feel like they have control over it. So it's like creating these systems and infrastructure and experiences that give people that sense of control and truly give them that control, I think is going to make this space a lot more welcoming and usable and less scary for a lot of people. Because I mean, technology is scary for enough of people. But something else that isn't scary was the question that you asked, Leemon, about the network milestone type stuff. And he talked about basically like, yeah, we crossed 11 billion transactions, blah, blah, blah. And he said, we expect it to accelerate. It won't stay at this speed forever. So, and he also mentioned too, mirror nodes are going to a hierarchical system because things are growing rapidly. So like the language that was used there and kind of those two tidbits, like I saw kind of echoed in different conversations in the space, on the mirror node front, the cascading hierarchical to kind of, system they're working on. But then just that word accelerate, like Leemon being really firm in the fact that we're seeing 2 billion or a billion transactions every 2 weeks or whatever. That's going to accelerate. I think that got a lot of people excited. Obviously 1 transaction per second, I don't think is what he had in mind, but
hey, we're up to, I'm watching it right now in real time at HederaTXNS.com, and we just bumped up to 6. So we're starting to make that slow climb back up to 1,000.
We are, folks, we're blistering now. We just 6x'd, man. This is out of control.
Well, I agree. I mean, if you look at the mirror node aspects and what they represent, like, so essentially scaling that aspect out, and there's a lot, I don't know, from Hedera's standpoint, like, they want to make sure that obviously that the data is being relayed correctly and everything else, but like you would expect that to expand out. I mean, I would expect that to potentially expand out massively in the future. And there's probably a lot of use cases and different models within even that, to try to relay like the actual nodes themselves. So
yeah, it's crazy. And perfectability, I'm gonna bring you up soon. I just want to finish unpacking all this stuff just while I have Ryan here, because this is fantastic. I want to touch on too, just on that, was those comments by Danny and Nick Votero just on the kind of zero knowledge proof, state proof stuff. I just want to read through the exchange for people that maybe didn't see it. They had commented on one of my posts kind of talking about a little snippet that they maybe have misheard, but also ties into some way. And I just wanted to just kind of tie it up here because it is so fascinating. It's definitely outside of my frame of technical understanding, but I just think it's useful information just pulling out from it. But again, they don't really know if it was misheard or misconstrued. It was just kind of pulling at threads. So Danny said in the white paper, the Hashgraph white paper, state proofs are clearly mentioned, but zero knowledge is a new twist. And this refers to our questions with Leemon talking about scaling and different types of things. And he was kind of talking about new cryptography that the team was working on and zero knowledge proofs and state proofs being sent from shards. And so that kind of mushed up in a bit of a soup. And so Danny continues, it's the first time Leemon mentions the combination of both. Not being a dev myself, not sure why zero knowledge is required. Maybe they could ask Leemon to elaborate on the next interview. We probably should. And then Nick Votero says, it makes the size of the state proof even smaller, referring to zero knowledge. Makes sharing easier and more efficient. Pretty wild that they're combining the two technologies. The entire state proof can be represented and shared cryptographically. With everything else we've seen on the network, my guess is that this allows the data/memory intensive state proofs to be offloaded onto the mirror nodes, like other intensive processes. And then Danny responds, my mistake, Leemon only mentioned zero knowledge with regards to decentralized identity. So he quoted Leemon saying, "We're continuing to work on state proofs and have actually invented new cryptography. We'll be publishing it soon. We have some great cryptographers and they have a proof of correctness for it." So Nick says, definitely heard it as combining state proofs and zero knowledge. So we don't quite know exactly what was said. And then Danny says, for accuracy, I had to re-listen to the podcast. New cryptography is definitely groundbreaking, but does not necessarily mean zero knowledge. So just wanted to make sure he's being accurate. And then what I inferred kind of from that back and forth and kind of not really being clear on it was like, could the proof of correctness Leemon speaks of just be a more optimal alternative to zero knowledge, and how state proofs could be shared and represented cryptographically, allowing, again, as Nick said, the memory intensive state proofs to be offloaded to the mirror nodes? Like, it's a rabbit hole, and it's exactly like you said. Like Leemon says, like 4 words, and now like heads are spinning, not really knowing like what that's about. I don't know if you kind of seen that exchange, like what your thoughts were on it, but I mean, it's definitely getting outside of my technical wheelhouse. Like proof of correctness, no idea what that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of doing a little bit of digging right now. Like I've heard of state proofs through Hedera before, but I'm also not a dev. But I'll read this real quick. In a typical decentralized ledger, if you need to cryptographically verify that a particular fact about that ledger, like a transaction or a balance, is true, then you basically need to run the entire blockchain and validate the blockchain from genesis till the point of when you are interested in validating. With state proofs, Hedera has defined an innovative way to provide a cryptographic proof for the blockchain where any consensus node in the Hedera network can provide a portable proof that can be cryptographically verified and trusted, even if you don't trust the node. So you're essentially trying to get proof that something existed, a transaction occurred, something happened on Hedera, in a way where you don't have to run everything from inception up until your point of interest. So the trust in the state proof is derived from the trust in the supermajority of the stake of Hedera nodes. I think what's occurring here is like, and whoever said that, most of the time we hear ZKP or zero knowledge proofs being talked about with identity, where it's like, you don't have to know. Maybe there's certain situations where you don't have to know that I'm a man, and you don't have to know that I'm 30 some years old, whatever my exact age is. You don't have to know that I live in the city, but you do have to know that I have a Toyota. I drive a Toyota. And it's like the minimal amount of information necessary to accomplish whatever your task or your goal is. And you can scale the zero knowledge proof stuff.
Yeah. It's like, how many things can you turn into just a yes or no answer? It's like the bank going, do you make over X amount a year? Yes or no, kind of.
Yep. And that's exactly how I look at like the zero knowledge proof stuff. And there's so much that can be integrated into. The majority of the stuff that we hear it being integrated into is digital identity. But I think it's really smart to hear Leemon say that they're looking at that in a way to like validate what's occurred on the network, whether that be state proofs and mirror nodes, whatever it might be. But looking at different use cases of zero knowledge proofs is basically what I took from that statement. And if they're looking at it in that regard from one aspect, they're probably looking at it in more that we didn't even ask about. So,
I think I can totally see what Nick is outlining is like, if you use kind of that zero knowledge proof kind of methodology, like you do offload a lot of heavy lifting from the state proofs to the actual mainnet. But like when Leemon says that proof of correctness, like it sounds kind of like what you're describing without having to go back to the genesis of the network and verify everything. It's like, that sounds like proof of correctness. And it sounds like Leemon was presenting that as an element of this new cryptography they're developing in relation to state proofs. So it's kind of like, is it a state proof with proof? Like, are we going to hear Leemon going like, we're launching state proofs and it uses this new, proof of correctness that we developed, and it's this new thing. Like it totally seems like that could be the case. That's what I took from it anyways. The other interesting thing was, just before we move on here, so I want to get into the Reddit report. I almost said the weather report. It is kind of like the weather report. Real quick,
because I just caught this again, Brandon.
What?
So when you talk, this is really interesting to me, and every time that you talk, I think about something that I haven't thought about before. So like when I initially interviewed Hasker back in 2020, I asked about real TPS and transactions per second. So it seems like Hedera is consistently interested in optimizing network capabilities and user experience. Because when I had that first interview, Christian was like, why would we scale TPS if we don't need to scale TPS? And now that we're talking about state proofs and zero knowledge proofs and all these other aspects and integrating them into multiple aspects, so most people don't realize, like, and this is why Ethereum is expensive for them, you know, in a very simplified way. Like, Ethereum is it's Turing complete. So when you're making a transaction on Ethereum, you're essentially using the entire network of Ethereum to make that transaction. And I've kind of I've made the analogy where it's like, if I want to buy a candy bar, when I want to buy a candy bar through Ethereum, I have to, every single step that I take down to my car, turning on my car, driving down, the gas that's used, walking into the store, buying the candy bar, coming back home, unwrapping the candy bar and eating it. Where it's like with the ZKP stuff, integrating that into different aspects of Hedera, it's like, well, I just want the candy bar. So what does it take for me just to get the candy bar? And that, I think, is a really interesting thing with zero knowledge stuff, where it's like, I just want to do this. What is the minimum amount of bandwidth and, you know, actioning that I need to do to just do this action? And it's really interesting. I'm sorry. I know that's like really nerdy.
No, 100, like, what it makes me feel like too is the same kind of vibe of like the gossip about gossip and virtual voting type of thing, where it's like, turns out the solution is just doing nothing. They just do a fake vote and there it is. And it's like, these innovations that we see when we push the boundaries are sometimes beyond what originally is conceptualized. So it's like, my brain is still obsessing over that kind of like proof of correctness thing and what we're going to hear around that. I think that's kind of what's really, I think that's the lead that's kind of buried here, is like, they've developed new cryptography, proof of correctness. Like, what is going on there? And the last thing I wanted to touch on just before we go to the Reddit report was, when Leemon was talking about the shared world stuff, you know, I asked him straight up, I was like, I mean, technology's changed a lot. Like, has it impacted the vision of shared worlds? Has that vision expanded? Has it changed? And he's kind of like, yeah, it's changed since the last time we presented it, obviously. And he kind of really summarized it. So he crystallized the shared worlds, vision and concept into like 2 sentences that I just pulled from the interview. That's so great. He said, it's going to be important that ledgers be able to send each other messages that contain verifiable proof of consensus. Once you have that capability, it becomes incredibly easy to send assets automatically between ledgers without bridges. So again, be able to quickly do those, as he's referring to, kind of like between shards and networks, like those state proofs that leverage something similar to like a zero knowledge proof or whatever, the proof of correctness or whatever it is. It's like, be able to do that quickly and stuff like that just seems crazy. And he's like, we're hopefully going to see an ABFT ledger universe of private, public, and hybrid ledgers. So it's like, again, like the same kind of like sending robots to Mars kind of thing. It's like Leemon is thinking from a much higher level, I think, than most of us in the ecosystem, and definitely very like somewhat of a departure from existing networks. But then again, with the direct stuff and everything, it shows how important all those other networks are. So it's just, there's so much there. He's covering so much ground with that. But yeah, on the shared world stuff and the forward-looking statements he gave, like, as you said, like it's just crazy. And I mean, before I move on the show here, like just on that, like, were there any other things now that we've kind of talked about it that kind of pop into your mind, or kind of like what would be your follow-up questions for Leemon?
This some of the stuff that we were talking about in this space.
Yeah.
To get him onto a 30-minute chat and be like, because, you know, I don't start thinking of these things because I'm trying to do future interviews and everything else, and it's always so crazy. And you're in the same boat. I mean, trying to stay on top of just the newest news and stuff. But when you start talking about these things, the questions that we were starting to think about now, and understand they're going to start to do kind of a spaces or a podcast or something around a wider array of like topics, is really interesting to me, and I want to support that, and I definitely want to get him on again even for like maybe a little follow up at some point. Maybe I'll have to message HashPack and see if we can get him on for a follow up again in the future. But
We'll have to.
you know how busy that guy is too, man. It was crazy to be able to sit down for an hour with that guy, because that stuff doesn't like happen all the time.
Oh, 100%. I mean, anytime you see Leemon or Mance on something, it's like, oh my God, you hit the nail on the head. It's like hearing him talk about stuff that isn't Hedera related is almost more interesting because it's so fresh. And something he brought up was that he and Mance want to do those fireside chats. And one of the other stories today was Mance's video he sent to the community. I'm sure everyone has seen it. It's the same as Leemon's, where it's like, hey, HBARbarians, shout out, whatever. But he said, we'll see you soon. So I don't know what that means. I think it may be in regards to that new like fireside chat series that he and Leemon want to do. That seems really interesting to me. It's just the two of them talking about like whatever topics. So that'd be interesting. But I mean, shout out to Mance. Thanks for the shout out or whatever. But yeah, King Solomon, was there anything else you wanted to touch on real quick before we move on here?
No, man. Just really appreciate whenever I sent you the outreach to come onto that spaces, or know that we do things like really kind of finite and formulated and try to make sure we nail down topics and stuff. And huge thank you to you. You absolutely killed it during that spaces, and just wanted to reach out and say thanks for the help, man. So.
Hey, really appreciate it. I mean, you're making it sound like I did you a favor, but I mean, I so grateful for the opportunity, humbled. I mean, it's been a dream of mine just being like a Hashgraph enthusiast to like interview Leemon and stuff. So like huge opportunity, like thank you, man. And like all the stuff you're doing with Genfinity, like great opportunity, down anytime, name the place. I'll be there. Really appreciate it, man.
100%, bro. Keep it going, man. These spaces, if you don't follow Brandon, if you're not in these spaces normally, I'm going to share it right now. He does these every Sunday. They're really concise. They give you a good overview of what's going on in the Hedera ecosystem. Always recommend giving Brandon a follow. Give Pixel Rugs a follow too if you're interested in the project work that he's doing as well. So I'm going to hop down to listener, and I'm going to share the space. And yeah, thanks, man. Happy Father's Day to anybody that's a real dad out there. So.
Hell yeah. Shout out to the real ones. Love it. All right. Cheers, man. Okay. On to the Reddit report. We're going to figure out what's going on. I think I can safely guess what's on the top of everyone's mind right now. But the Reddit report is basically, I've got Perfect Ability, who is, he's kind of like top dog on the Hedera subreddit. And the Hedera subreddit is a group of like, I think it's like well over 30,000 HBARbarians over there, Hashgraph enthusiasts sharing news and everything. So, what's going on, man? Like, what's on everyone's mind?
Well, the first thing we got, and it kind of transitioned nice because you mentioned it before, is Mance's message to the community. And what he said on Twitter was a huge thank you to the HBAR community that has brought Hedera where it is today. It still amazes me to see how far we've come, and I am beyond excited to see where you will take us in the future. And I got that right here.
Hello, HBARbarians. We were just reflecting this morning about how far we've come over the past 5 years. We have 29 council members. I remember when we started this with the first 5 council members at the Signiel Hotel in Seoul years ago. We've come so far, and we could not have done this without you. Thank you for having come with us on this journey, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
There's that see you soon that you mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. It's like it's so funny, but that's great.
Yeah, well, on you guys' interview, and by the way, that was really awesome. Like you and King Soul just like killed it. I really liked the aspect of having like 2 people interview somebody, because you just get like so many like good questions, because your brain works differently than King Soul. So you guys really together like just asked some really amazing questions. So that was pretty.
I think honestly, it's like, we've been on each other's show so much. We have a great chemistry just chatting, but then also it's like, yeah, so much of your brain you have to be like doing so many things in your brain at once. So being able to tag team an interview is so great, because as the other person's working through their stuff, you're almost kind of like digesting what's going on, and it works so well. So it's like, I'm a huge fan of those tag team interviews. I think it's great.
Same here. then we have a tweet that Mark Cuban said that was interesting. He said, and I quote, my entire career has been people telling me why the companies I started were ridiculous and not needed until they found themselves using them. Smart contracts are about 6 years old. Maybe the name isn't accurate, but the utility is valid. 90% of blockchain companies will go broke. 99% of tokens will go broke, just like 99% of early internet companies did. 99% of the startup companies leveraging LLMs will disappear, but the winners will be game changer. That's the way tech works. And who said something similar to that in 2017?
Who was that?
Let's see.
Typically, the history of any kind of market is that you have this enormous springing up of thousands and thousands of companies, and then you have a crash, and then you get down to 3 or 4, whatever, big companies that continue on there. And that's the way every revolution tends to happen. I'm sure we'll see the same pattern here.
I just love how clutch he is. And if you do some numbers, it's a really interesting thing. So let's take what Leemon said. He said 3 or 4 big names remain, all right? So let's just call it 5. So there's, 5 crypto left. And we've read predictions of total future value of crypto market being anywhere in the ballpark from 5 trillion to 250 trillion. So let's be a little conservative. And let's say the crypto market in the future is going to be, with those 5, $10 trillion. $10 trillion divided by the 5 remaining cryptocurrencies. So let's say about approximately 2 trillion of each, as valuation. So if you take 2 trillion, you divide by 50 billion coins, you get HBAR at $40.
But by the way, I just want to point out, like, one of the things I love about the Hedera community is like how, in general, like how unfazed we are about stuff. Like, we're literally like witnessing a crisis on the mainnet. We're like, yeah, HBAR $40. Yeah, sounds about right. It's so good. Like, what the hell's going on?
Don't want to be super moon boy, but
yeah,
I believe that Hedera will be one of those companies, those 3 or 4 that Leemon mentioned. And if we take just those numbers, it's kind of exciting just to see like what it could become. So I thought that was pretty interesting to share. Next, we have the Coinbase that showcased a project built on Hedera called Acor, and I thought that was really cool because usually Coinbase, they just, they're always like shilling like shit coins or, so it was really, like a breath of fresh air to see them, promote an actual, good project. And the CEO, Jim Nasser, had a few words. He says, "Thank you, Coinbase, for your interest in our work and how blockchain and DLT can practically used in healthcare solutions." And I got the video right here. This is what Coinbase played. Trying to get this video to load. Yeah, I can't get that unfortunately, but
that's okay. You know what? We'll do like on the recording. I'll like edit it in so it just sounds seamless. So I'll edit it in. It's all good, dude.
You're the man. You're the man.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm the founder of Acor. We're using blockchain technologies to verify health data. So as someone who has worked in public health, I can tell you honestly, our health data is a mess. It's fragmented, siloed, and often not even digitized. Public health organizations are really missing important information that could lead to improved population-wide outcomes. With Acor technologies, health organizations can cryptographically verify data access and exchange, as well as prove the authenticity of the data source. By making more data readily available to public health systems, we are improving the return on our resources, as well as the impact on the public health system.
Let's move on. This is really cool. And this is a breadcrumb, but there was a post that IDEMIA posted recently on Twitter, about them doing a collaboration with the Bank of England on their CBDC. So the central bank digital currency from a leak that happened that we got, I think CoinDesk is the one that obtained the leak. But the central bank digital currency must be usable offline from day one to safeguard privacy. The draft law says, quote, the digital euro shall be available for both online and offline digital euro payment transactions as the first insurance of the digital euro. For offline transaction, neither the European Central Bank nor the payment services providers will gain access to personal transaction data. Through banks who distribute the currency can send financial crime authorities details on how accounts are funded if they suspect money laundering. So IDEMIA, or am I saying this right? Is it
I think it's like IDEMIA or something. I think it's IDEMIA.
They specialize in offline payments. And in one of their videos, they mention Hedera, which is really cool, and hopefully this will work.
Imagine a world where stablecoin payments can be at the forefront of financial inclusion. StraitsX stablecoins leverage IDEMIA's technical capabilities and redemption on the Hedera ledger to offer offline payments, driving financial inclusion, higher payment efficiency, and savings on environmental costs.
So that could be, they could be leveraging Hedera for their offline payments. They did mention before, this is pulled from a video that IDEMIA shared how long ago? 6 months ago.
Oh, is this the one where you like do the retina scan or whatever to get your is that like the KYC or whatever?
No. This one, the title is IDEMIA's Secure Offline Payment Solution for CBDCs and Stablecoin.
Interesting.
Yep. So, and if you keep going, and I don't know if you guys heard, they mentioned Hedera, then StraitsX. And for those not familiar with StraitsX, it's a Singapore parliamentary stablecoin backed one-to-one that leverages IDEMIA and Hedera. So, another, potential CBDC in Singapore. So, we have one with IDEMIA and with the Bank of England. They're doing a pilot there. We have one in Singapore with StraitsX. And we also have, if you keep digging, we can also find that Japan's central bank, IDEMIA and SoftSpace launched a JCBCDC pilot to test CBDC payment solution and conduct tests with Tokyo merchants. They didn't mention Hedera, but with the track record that we've seen, with the Bank of England and Singapore, seeing I can feel that maybe a little optimistic that there possibly could be a connect there with Hedera. And there's also a few other things that we can look at, with breadcrumbs in regards to IDEMIA. JCBD, the Japanese card payment network, announced a central bank digital currency CBDC proof of concept. JCBC with IDEMIA and the Malaysian fintech SoftSpace. The aim is to demonstrate that CBDC can be used with the existing payment cards and payment infrastructure. So that's another use case that they're testing out in Japan. And IDEMIA has been awarded a $120 million contract to deploy the TSA's next-gen credential authentication technology, CAT2. CAT2 enhances security screening, plus enables a touchless experience through biometric technology, plus digital ID acceptance. I think that's the video you were mentioning, Brandon.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna drop on the comments here. I did a thread on Twitter with all these like breadcrumbs, and I think they're definitely worth to look at if you got some time. And then another one is the Missouri becomes the first state to allow users to remotely renew their driver's license or ID card in a pilot with mobile ID from IDEMIA. In partnership with the Missouri Department of Revenue, the app allows residents to manage their identity securely plus easily from a phone. How is that related to Hedera? I'm not 100% sure, but in the comment that I'm going to drop below, I found some patents that with IDEMIA and Hedera, yeah, so they're definitely interesting. So there could definitely be something there. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for the Reddit report. You guys pretty much talked about a lot of the stuff I wanted to talk about. So yeah, I think we're Gucci.
Right on. I love it, man. Well, that's some good stuff. And I mean, in regards to like the IDEMIA stuff, like I remember it flew under my radar quite a bit. So hearing all those pieces put together and kind of illustrating those breadcrumbs, it's definitely an interesting use case. I know there's definitely different feelings around CBDCs and stuff, but I think the offline component, offline crypto payments alone is just super, super compelling and really something that's going to be required, is being able to have DLTs interface with stuff offline to replace cash just in general. So I love that. Well, really appreciate it, man. And any shout outs or anything you want to say just before you hop off?
Happy Father's Day to all your amazing fathers out there. And shout out to you for, doing this space every Sunday. And, we were able to gain a lot of knowledge and, learn from each other. So thank you.
Love it. Really appreciate it, man. Take care. And I mean, Perfect Ability. I mean, he's like, we just started doing this new segment because the Reddit stuff was so insightful, and I mean, just been an absolute pleasure. The segment's been getting tighter and tighter, and we've got he's playing recordings now and stuff, so I think it's great. So huge shout out to you, man. I know I want to talk about some HashPack stuff today, so Pluto, I see you down there. If you want to pop up, feel free. I mean, the Leemon interview, all that stuff. I mean, it's so funny just highlighting it again that the same week that, after years, I finally get to interview Leemon is the week that the network's down at 1 transaction per second. It's rocking my brain. It's so crazy. I'm so hype, but then also so freaked out generally, just as anyone would be. It's just never a dull moment. We do have an update though in regards to the 1 transaction per second quibble from Justin Atwell from Swirlds. He says, in response to somebody else sharing their concerns, he says, nothing to be worried about. And this is the, what's Justin's title at Hedera, sustainability lead for Hedera. So obviously AMIO is a sustainability play, right? And I don't think we have anything to worry about. I mean, the only thing that makes this worth highlighting is Atma regularly will spin down their transactions by 98% because they need to top up the account that pays for those transactions. And I think it's a regular thing that happens, no cause for alarm. This time around, it was just seeing it go completely off was strange. But I mean, I'm not seeing any alarm bells going off. So I think we just wait it out. We see what's going on. Enjoy what we do is we enjoy the nostalgia, right? Single digit TPS that takes me back to 2022, takes me back to 2021. It's just feels like yesterday. I'm feeling nostalgic. But HashPack has some new stuff coming in the form of a new main menu option called Advanced Tools. And there's one new thing there called Deep Links. And I didn't know a ton about Deep Links. I thought it was just Deep Links, but it turns out it's very, very deep links. You can do a lot with it. I've got Tyler from HashPack up here. I'm really curious. So Deep Links are basically a new way for anyone to share a link, let's say on Twitter. And if someone clicks that, it can open HashPack. Let's say I want to share a link to a listing on Zeus Market or SentientX or something. And it's link on Twitter, they open it and it jumps right to that page in their HashPack. That seems super cool. But I'm curious, what else is going on this Deep Link stuff? I'm really curious. Lay it out for us, man.
Hey, Brandon. Nice to be on again. So Deep Links. It's been kind of a recurring theme that we've noticed where a lot of DApp creators and NFT creators and stuff have been trying to share launches they're doing or pages in their DApp, and especially on mobile it can be a bit unwieldy to kind of direct people to these pages. You have to go to the DApp browser, open it, up in the dApp browser, then navigate to the page, especially on iOS, because we're not allowed to link out to any platforms that have NFTs on iOS. So you have to like manually type the URLs into the dApp browser. So this system is sort of to streamline that kind of interaction where somebody can generate one of these links and share it. And once the user clicks on it, it goes directly into HashPack, into that the page on the dApp that they specify. It's super powerful. It's kind of a bit, it is under the advanced tools for a reason. So you kind of have to know what you're doing to want to do something like this. But I think going forward, it will really kind of streamline some of these interactions that creators have with their communities.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and it also depends kind of how deep you want to go. I mean, just in general, a project being able to share like, hey, check out our dApp on HashPack, click this link, and it just jumps into the person's HashPack, brings them to the dApp. Like, that's pretty cool. But then also, you mentioned to me, like, if you have, let's say, a particular trading pair on a DEX that you're trying to build liquidity for or something, you could deep link directly to that pool or something like that. It definitely gets your brain thinking about, like, sending people kind of directly where you want them to go, the same way you would kind of like with a website. I think it's really useful. I can definitely see the utility in it.
Yeah, 100%. And so this is kind of like the version 1 release of it. So right now you can link to the HashPack store page, a specific store item or a dApp. And the caveat here is the dApp does have to be listed in the HashPack dApp browser. And that's for security reasons. So you're not just like, people aren't just linking to like sketchy stuff. It does have to be whitelisted in that kind of dApp browser page. And that's basically a security measure around that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That makes sense. Cause that's a huge component to this too, is like, you don't want like random links going out. So having it be an app that's already been approved for the dApp tab, like that's important. But I mean, like, I don't want to push you too much further, but it's like, what really stood out to me is there's a main menu item called advanced tools, and there's one thing in it. Obviously more stuff is coming. So is this kind of a way for HashPack to start branching out to some of these, I guess you could call advanced tools, like creator tools or different things like that? Are we going to start seeing like a new kind of arm of HashPack start to expand these kind of advanced tools? Is it going to be a pretty large scope?
Yeah, I would say so. So one of the kind of tricky parts of HashPack is we use the same code base for like the web app extension and the mobile apps, and the UI is getting a bit claustrophobic. So we needed somewhere to kind of put some of these things that we've been working on. So like we have a bunch of kind of advanced little tools that we use in our like dev builds. So like there's I don't want to give too much away, but there's some cool stuff that we have.
Hey, don't worry, it's just us and a couple of our close friends. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so you can use your imagination, maybe some advanced kind of blockchain tools. If anyone has any ideas for something that they'd love to see, reach out and let us know what we could put in here, because we're open to a lot of things. But one of the kind of ways we're going to be expanding this deep link thing is, so like even associating tokens can be a bit of a pain, right? So like we're going to eventually like enable linking directly to like an associate page, maybe some sort of airdrop something here or there, maybe who knows, even some way to like earn some HBAR through your wallet. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But lots of cool things coming. Keep an eye on it.
Okay, interesting. So just pulling that thread a little bit. So when you're saying like a token association or something like that, like, are you thinking in the context of like just a general, like almost like URL string where it's like if you click it, it just autofill. Like if you're like associate this token and they click it, it just brings them to the token association screen with the token ID autofilled, and they can just click the button and do it. Or is it even deeper than that?
Basically that. It can just get kind of old sometimes to have to explain to people how to associate a token, you know. So having like just an easy, direct way to get them to do that is kind of what that would be for. Yeah.
That's handy. All right, man. I dig it. That's really, really interesting. Was there anything you wanted to share with folks just before I continue on with the show here?
Not off the top of my head. I think we have some exciting stuff happening this week, so keep your eyes out for that. But maybe next week I can talk about that a bit if you want.
Hell yeah, anytime. I mean, I'm just so happy to see the wallet ecosystem growing and stuff like that. I think that there's a great, again, to bring up Steve Jobs again, it just reminded me, like, I'm seeing that something really healthy in the ecosystem is competition. Like, now that we're starting to see this ecosystem mature, like we're actually starting to see, especially in the wallet space, like a lot of these new approaches to solving problems, user experience, even just kind of how business is done. And it's like, this kind of Steve Jobs story that popped in my mind just looking at the wallet space right now is like when Steve Jobs was a kid, there was a neighbor that he had that would tumble rocks and basically put regular rocks in with a little solution, tumble it overnight, and they'd come out really smooth. So I feel like, as you know, again, competition, or I like to call it kind of like co-opetition, where it's almost like collaboration, cooperation, competition. It's like I'm just seeing wallets and dexes and just kind of rubbing up against each other. It's not always the easiest process, but like just continually getting more and more polished. So I love seeing, HashPack never resting on the laurels, always kind of addressing customer needs, focusing on the users and stuff. So a huge shout out to you guys and just like this growing wallet ecosystem. Really appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. And you're right. It is exciting. Everybody's kind of pushing in different directions and then pulling the others along in that way a little bit too, so it's pretty exciting. Yeah. But thanks for having me on, and have fun with the rest of the show.
Right on. Cheers, man. Okay. So we got a bit more to blast through, everybody. I mean, we got a lot going on this week. I mean, I wanted to make sure to take that time to recap the Leemon stuff, everything like that. So if you haven't already yet, give the show a share, give the spaces a share, buckle in a little bit. We have a bit more to go, a bit more to talk about. I want to dive into something a little juicy, not a lot to talk about, but definitely an unfolding story that has been told over years. If anyone was in the NFT ecosystem on Hedera at the very beginning, a very prominent project was Access, spelled with a V instead of an A. Really cool brand, great concept, cool artwork. They had these metacores that would unlock different capabilities within the platform that were very vague. Long story short, millions of dollars were spent. The platform didn't do so well. It never really launched. The blame was put to inefficiencies with the network. Quite a few things didn't add up. A lot of the blame, rightfully so, being placed on CEO Dill. And really, it was one of those situations where a lot of people in the space kind of gave up on it. A lot of people felt like they had lost a ton of money, even though there was constant reassurance that things were there. And to be frank, it fit the story arc of every single kind of failure at this scale that we've seen across all sorts of different networks. And that was kind of it, right? And I mean, we'd hear about it here and there, but there was really nothing happening. And I mean, always open to having anyone at Access on the show. I mean, it'd be great to kind of figure out what's going on objectively. So, I mean, my DMs are open. But Garrett Little on Twitter tweets the following. He says, ex-chief of staff for NXOS, and NXOS is kind of, I guess, the parent company of Access. I don't know. It's very confusing. My brain already hurts. He says, I'm raising my voice about Access. I have filed a lawsuit versus Dill and Alex Oak and the two companies. I am reaching out to media outlets as well. I'm ready to share documents, conversations, anything and everything to blast them. So quickly he was advised to, file for whistleblower protection or whatever with OSHA and like everything like that. So that's an unfolding story, but it does seem like this was a very substantial kind of moment in the ecosystem, right? Could very well, I don't think it still is, but I mean, you know what? It could very well still be technically like one of the biggest NFT mints ever in the ecosystem yet, right? Millions of dollars, all that kind of stuff. And we do know that they were NFTs that were minted on the mainnet, but the problem is it was done in a custodial fashion. People couldn't offload their fiat. They couldn't gain custody of their NFTs, all that different type of stuff. Again, very huge moment in the ecosystem, very difficult moment in the ecosystem. It kind of passed us by. There's new news around it. This tweet shows that we might see some new updates or revelations. So just bringing it to people's attention. I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare situation for many, but we've got some new news kind of. Quickly, just to bring it back to the Leemon stuff. Leemon also did a talk at Proof of Talk, and I'm not going to go into any details or any specifics. There was nothing really of note to share. I just want to make a general comment on Leemon. I mean, having just interviewed him and seeing him kind of in this context, it's like, I really think that, like, he doesn't, on the surface, he's not often thought of as a public speaker, right? He's a very kind of like low-key guy, but just seeing him again, it's like, the guy is one of the best public speakers, and especially seeing him on a panel, like, he doesn't suffer anybody. Like, there's a side to this guy that he can just plow through. Like, if someone's opinion is clearly like not in alignment with his, and he's certain that he has a high conviction that he's correct, he will literally just steamroll over somebody. And you're like, and also too, some of the ways he can like take in some information and conversations and reframe it. And anyways, I just think that, like, as a crypto founder, like, especially after Leemon and Mance kind of going dark for a little bit there and seeing a reemergence and kind of in the public speaking component. I mean, just being reminded, like, this guy is top of the top. Like, you put him up against any crypto founder and he's like top notch. Like, you could put him up against like Charles or Vitalik or any of those guys, and it's like really top notch. So, I mean, just was reminded of that recently. I wanted to highlight it on the show. It's pretty great. But I mean, I when I was interviewing him, I joked about that he doesn't tweet and that I like it. I mean, it would be really cool to see Leemon tweeting more. I think that, like, those insights and that personality and that brand is great, but I mean, why ruin a great thing? We don't have a crypto founder arguing on Twitter. It's not a horrible thing. Christian Hasker tweets out on the 14th that he is at the governing council meeting, and it's happening now. And I'm really curious about that one in particular, because remember, it's off the back of an in-person governing council meeting. So the governing council members are fresh off 3 days of being like with each other, communicating, collaborating, getting a month break to digest information, and then coming back for a meeting. I do have a feeling that this one is going to be a very interesting one to see. It feels like it's a bit of a recap, a reconnection, a looping back on things. So it'll be really interesting to see what's going on. Saucer Swap is letting everyone know that they're about to transcend. They're about to transcend, folks, and they're not doing anything cheeky. They're just saying, listen, that we're transcending on July 15th, July. So, I mean, shout out to the aliens, going back to the mothership or the cows or something. I mean, what I think it's about is, I know that Saucer Swap was tweeting their Sauce Pro plan. We talked about it on the show previously. Very similar to like something like a Coinbase would have or something. We've seen quite a few crypto projects offer a subscription-based premium service, much in alignment with what we're used to on Web 2. Obviously, their offering would most likely be paid in sauce. It's called Sauce Pro. Why not? And it appears like that will be launching mid-July. I don't know what else they would be teasing. I mean, if it's something else, I mean, dope. I think it's Sauce Pro. That's my thoughts. If I'm wrong, Larry, give me a shout. Let me see what's going on. I was going to talk about the Michael Garber tweet. I mean, I feel bad. I did this to Justin too. I think the whole ecosystem does this sometimes. These guys like Justin and Michael, like from Hedera or from Swirl, so these guys that work there, right, that are devs or just like management or like whatever it is, they'll send out these tweets that are in response to something, expressing like genuine human excitement, right? And when I read them, or when the community reads them, we read them as though they're reacting to something else, right? Some other type of information that we may not know about. And it's something I'm going to try to be more mindful of. These guys don't have like PR backgrounds. They're regular people that work at these companies and get excited about the same things that we're getting excited about. And in some cases don't know anything more than we know about. So Michael Garber tweeted out, companies are getting FOMO for the remaining governing council seats, like the tail end of a sold out NFT sale. And I think the community sees that and goes, oh my God, this is a new revelation. Companies are just going crazy over this and retweeting him and all these kinds of things. And I think like literally what that was him reacting to the interview that he was listening to that King Solomon and I were having with Leemon. I literally think that's what it was. He was just another person in the community excited about the interview and what he was hearing. And like, I took that as like, oh my God, here's some breadcrumb or rumor or whatever. And like anyone in the community, it's like, turns out it's like, no, I was just listening to the show and was excited. So it's like, I think in general, remembering that like, not all these things that people talk about on Twitter are anything. You're just witnessing a regular person have a reaction to something the same as you are. So I'm going to try to be more mindful of that. I think especially in a bear market and when we're bored, kind of like jumping right out of the gate, being very eager to generate that excitement. I'm going to try to be more conscious of that. I mean, I get this show is gaining in popularity. I used to write, a tech publication with 13 editors. You have to be responsible. I mean, when you have people listening to you and, people at Swirls or whatever, tweeting something about, some stuff that you're talking about or whatever, it's like, you gotta be responsible. So it's like, I'm going to try to be a little bit more responsible with that stuff. I've really tried to not overhype things or not try to like build a mountain out of an anthill. So, and I can't even imagine how frustrating it is for these guys too. They just want to be excited about what's happening. They literally work at Hedera or at Swirls and they're seeing something exciting and they're like, I'm excited. And then we're like, what are you excited about? Oh my God, Michael's excited about something. What could it be? More on the show. I'll talk about it. There's nothing to talk about. It's just literally the same stuff I was excited about. So I think it's going to be important for people like myself to be a little more conscious of that. So shout out to Michael, shout out to Justin. Continue enjoying the things that you're enjoying. And I'll try to shoot you a DM next time I get a little too excited about something. You can just tell me to calm down. HBAR Suite, new DEX. They just added a cross-chain component to their DEX. So being able to trade assets on other networks, right? Swapping HBAR for Ethereum, yada, yada, yada. They're going through a third party with that. So, you're going to eat it on fees. It's not going to be as effective as bridging something like via Hashport or whatever, but great option. And I mean, seeing this story of a smart contract-less DEX coming to life, like it's running right now and some people are using it, and it's very, very captivating, very fascinating, right? I mean, only on Hedera would you see, it was only a matter of time, right, before we had some of these traditional DeFi financial services and products offered in a way that took advantage of Hedera's native protocol, the L1, and inherently that would be an app net, right? It's not going to be something that's using a smart contract. So fascinating story to watch. I mean, quite frankly, it doesn't matter what your opinion is on this DEX or that DEX or whatever. It's like, just from a technical standpoint, like, what if it doesn't work? What if it does? You know, the whole notion of this network is that AppNets and building things without smart contracts are a viable option and scalable option, and arguably a better alternative. And then the other side to the coin is, well, nobody's doing that right now. You put yourself on an island. It's a risk. It's something new. It's something fresh. I'm keeping my eye on it. We'll see what happens. Maybe this one works. Maybe it doesn't. But I think that it is part of this Web3 future. And I mean, shout out to those guys for going out on a little bit of a limb. I think it's well worth it. By the way, if I don't know what time it is here, we got to get this wrapped up soon. I mean, if Hangry is around, someone shoot him a DM. I'd love to have him up here to chat on something. I don't know what the chances are of that. He's a busy guy. He's a popular guy. But there's some big news. I'll make sure to mention it. But if I can get him up, I just don't have the brain power to message him. I put my do not disturb on my phone when I'm doing the show, because I keep getting DMs and stuff when I'm doing the show, and it's so distracting. There's a new no code / low code options for building on Hedera from Jogit. Very cool. I think this is really critical. I mean, not everyone's a developer. There is definitely always a shortage of developers in Hedera. Everyone's spread thin. So you got a good idea. You want to maybe work on a minimum viable product. You want to kind of see if your idea would bring value to somebody. Now you have options with companies like Jogit to go in and have a modular experience building things, much like you have like a WYSIWYG website editor, building a little doodad for the network. I think that's great. There's a YouTube video. I shared it in the thread. There's not really much to explain, right? We're all familiar what can be built on the network. We're all familiar that you have to use some kind of SDK or whatever and coding and everything. And we're also all familiar with website builders like WordPress or Squarespace or whatever it is. So it's like, it's kind of that vibe. It's a little easier to make it happen, get an idea out there. So I'd say if you have an idea of something cool, if you've identified a problem in the ecosystem that should be solved, there's no excuses now. Go check it out. Go build something. Go play around. That's how it all gets started. The update from Hedera in relation to the World Economic Forum. I mean, definitely a lot of opinions on this topic and Hedera's involvement. Quote, Hedera is proud to have contributed to the Reimagining Digital ID Insight Report published by the World Economic Forum, providing analytical frameworks, tools, and recommendations regarding decentralized identification technology, policy, governance, and implementation. So, I mean, one thing that I think it was Brett McDowell, chair of the Hedera board, was talking about, he was previously at the FIDO Alliance for privacy type stuff. Anyways, he said something that kind of stuck with me because he was speaking a little bit to this, a little bit to the World Economic Forum stuff and these kinds of topics around digital ID. And he said something kind of interesting to me that I kind of keep in mind when I talk about these topics is, he says, when we talk about digital ID or decentralized identity, partially what we're talking about is humans, right? A decentralized identity for a person. A lot of what we talk about is digital IDs for things much like what Atma.io is doing, right? Decentralized identity for products and parts and widgets along a supply chain. There's a lot of decentralized identity around non-human entities and products and things out there, digital and physical. So that's also a component of this. I always try to look at it from that perspective where like a portion of it is decentralized identity for people. A lot of it is also in relation to other things. So there's that. But also, again, it's like the World Economic Forum. I think that with a lot of narrative around that, it's, I definitely am hesitant, especially these days when I hear about consolidation of powers or kind of this, I don't know exactly how to put it, but it's just, it definitely, like so many other people, a hair in my ear twitches and kind of like just something doesn't feel quite right. And I completely get that. And what I will say is that I think about two scenarios, right? And in both, I think part of the problem is I think everyone can agree that the World Economic Forum, there's no sign of it slowing down. It's a flywheel that's running at, full speed right now. So really there's two scenarios. It's like one scenario where we don't have Hedera involved. And then there's another scenario where Hedera is involved in some capacity. And I mean, I don't think Hedera represents the community as well as it could yet. But by its nature, Hedera is arguably a DAO. By its nature, Hedera is governed by these companies. By its nature, the community could have a DAO that becomes a governing council member, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be community nodes, whatever. It's going to continue to get more decentralized. Having this kind of decentralized entity as part of these conversations, potentially having regular people throw some weight around, it's a better alternative than not being involved at all. I'm happy Hedera is a part of it and contributing and having a seat at the table and calling some of these shots, because I do think that a lot of the opinions of Hedera does align in some ways with the community. So it's like, it's tough. I mean, it's good to have a seat at the table and have our network have a seat at the table. There's a lot of contention around what's going on. So a story to follow. Not going to dive into it too much further. Just wanted to highlight it because I know it's so important to so many people. Want to make people aware. So those conversations, those difficult conversations can continue because they're important. So great to have context. Great to talk about it. Shout out to Hgraph and Patches from Hgraph and Turtle Moon. The Bitcoin ordinals stuff has been very interesting to watch unfold. Tens of millions of dollars of liquidity have moved through those little NFTs, and there's all sorts of strange ways that they're building out that infrastructure. To me, it sounds like it's 5 guys and a laptop. It's scaling. They're trying to figure out different things, and very smartly, Patches approaches that community and says, listen, you guys need essentially a layer 2 to do all sorts of different things. Inherently, Bitcoin for these fungible tokens and for these ordinals and stuff is not optimal. You want to be able to move these things around. You want to be able to have governance. You want to be able to have decentralization. Why not leverage something like a Hashgraph that's open source that you can spin up on your own to accomplish these things? And Hgraph actually did like a vote, leveraging ordinals, all those different types of things on their platform. So just wanted to highlight that as a really great example of the Hashgraph and Hedera community looking for ways that this network and this technology can help other networks succeed, because through those positive experiences, interactions, and results, this technology is going to gain adoption, right? So I think this is a really great approach in a variety of different approaches that's so important. So, I mean, shout out to Patches, shout out to Hgraph, shout out to the Ordinals people. Lots of cool stuff happening there. Tons of money flowing around. Lots of disorganization and lack of infrastructure. A great situation for Hedera. I think that instead of turning our nose up at other networks, realizing that effectively Hedera can act as a layer 2 for these other networks to supplement different things. A common example is sometimes networks like Solana can struggle to keep time correctly and accurately. Hedera and its consensus service can help with that. So it's a vibe, guys. So shout out to Hgraph, shout out to Patches, all that good stuff. What else we got going on? I mean, the Masari Crypto Q2 report came out. Go check it out. Just some 2 highlights. Hedera champions revenue growth quarter over quarter, increasing revenue by 489%. And that's revenue, right? That is money generated through transactions, albeit very small. It is growing at a quick clip. So that can be appreciated. The growth is attributed to the increased use of HCS. Now, again, HCS doesn't make a lot of money per transaction, very, very small. As we see a diversification of transactions and types of those transactions moving through the mainnet, revenue could drastically increase. And I'll give you a quick example. Let's say we're averaging at 1,000 transactions per second. Currently, about 99.5 of those transactions or more are HCS transactions, right? Low revenue transactions. If the diversification of non-HCS transactions were to increase from 0.5% to maybe 1.5% or 2%, revenue on the network could 10x. So it's not just about the amount of transactions flowing through the network, but it's also about the different types of transactions, because they're not created equal. They're very, very different in terms of revenue generation by a factor of 100. So one type of transaction could be worth 100 or 1,000 of a different type of transaction. So you can definitely see the impacts there. Another interesting tidbit from this report was the total full-time dev count increased by 4% across all networks. Hedera's full-time devs increased by 28%. So in the face of this bear market, to the credit of the foundation, Hedera, all its affiliated parties, hats off. I mean, although it could be more effective and optimized, there continues to be aggressive development in the ecosystem, and just manpower. So I think that people power. So I think that is just incredible. So I mean, great report. We're at 1 transaction per second. So I think that we've got to bring it back, right? Don't want to scare these people doing these reports, but there it is. On the flip side, the testnet is continuing to scream. I mean, it's not screaming right now, but we've seen it nipping at the heels of the 10K TPS mark. We're watching it steadily tick above 5,000 TPS. So as Leemon says, right, watch the testnet. That activity will eventually move over to the mainnet. I like what I'm seeing on testnet. We'll continue watching. I think it's a bit of a vibe, you know. And then just the last, I think this is one of our last stories. It's worth mentioning just a couple things from the recent HBAR bull video that Brandon posts every Friday. If you don't watch those, please go check them out. They're fantastic. He's been doing them longer than I've been doing this show. True OG in the space. I think he was doing episodes since like 2018 or something crazy like that. So, and his recent episode, and this just goes off of an article that Cointelegraph published, headline, breaking, U.S. lawmakers file SEC Stabilization Act to fire Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler, infamous head of the SEC, having a very productive tenure, I'd say, and coming after Binance, coming after Coinbase, doing some pretty crazy stuff. Bitcoin's not a security, everything else is a security, all that kind of stuff. That article comes out and it segues nicely into the HBAR bull had the chief legal officer at the HBAR Foundation, George Pesach, who shared a couple things, and I'll read. I'll kind of just break down a couple of my notes. So the way George interprets the broad actions against Binance and Coinbase by the SEC under Gary is, and he says this, Gary putting his fingers in his ears, going, la, 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 I'm not listening, there's no argument. And I'd have to agree with that sentiment in particular. It definitely feels that way. George goes on to say, it's a difficult position because it doesn't allow for a path forward. And I really think that's what this is about, is regardless of what different players' intentions are, right? Regardless of what Binance's, Coinbase's, and the SECs and the CFTCs and all these different players, all their independent intentions. It's like we just need, a path forward. And there just is none. So I think that is, definitely a difficult situation to be in. Something else that George says on the show, he talks about the fact that the House Financial Services Committee and the AG Committee regulate the CFTC. The CFTC regulates the SEC. So this is important to note because Narimi from Hedera was in front of these committees presenting use cases that are built on Hedera, making the case for DLTs to these committees, and hearings for these committees continue. There was just one this week. So that I have heard is pretty wild. So it's very interesting to understand that kind of like Russian nesting doll of regulations and how that all kind of ties together. That was a very interesting. Those are very interesting, and those committees have drafted the quote digital asset market structure bill. So when we talk about having a pathway forward, this is a really good bet for a pathway forward from these committees that regulate the SEC effectively. And he also touches on the Ripple case. He reminds everybody the SEC has brought 140 cases to the judiciary and won them all, right? So it's all about kind of, we saw the Hinman emails updates and all those different types of things. So it's definitely about correcting course on a new pathway. And again, George notes, for clear legislation, the Ripple case should win. If you're just buying a product on a marketplace, it shouldn't be a security. He references Micah here as well. He said it shouldn't be a security. So basically saying, if you're on an NFT marketplace and you're buying an NFT, you're just buying a product, same as in other contexts outside of crypto. So it's like, there's so many kind of clear common sense elements to this that are just lost in the conversation and the craziness from the SEC. The Ripple summary judgment decision should have been in Q2, which he's kind of saying is the first path forward. So the second path forward would be the digital asset management structure bill, as I mentioned previously, passing as legislation in Congress, which would be a challenge, right? It has to go to the House, then it has to go to the Senate. It's a whole thing. So, and you could see, Elizabeth Warren and different lawmakers that are that aren't sold on the idea of crypto, making that a challenge. So those were some insights on that. Very interesting. The other thing that was on the show, I think the last thing I'll mention in the show, because then we're going to wrap this up, guys, because I know we've been going for a while here. These episodes get so dense, but I really appreciate everyone sticking around. He had Rob Allen on the show previously at the HBAR Foundation, now at the Hashgraph Association. Always interesting to hear Rob Allen's insights. True Hedera OG. I want to just quickly mention a couple things that Rob Allen said. And this is in the context of they originally wanted to compare Hedera as a network to Algorand, but instead it was just Rob Allen talking about what makes Hedera really cool, great, and special. And a few things. He says that we don't talk enough about the ABFT component and the fair ordering component and the fixed fee component. He says these are so unique and so fundamental to the network, especially for enterprise. So critical. He says like those three things alone set Hedera apart from other networks, and it is true. And I can't remember the last time that I really thought deeply about those aspects. I think we just kind of accept it as, just the way things are. But it's worth a reminder that they're actually, just even the fixed fees, like that is such a revelation in how this technology can work that is a no-brainer for enterprise. So that's crazy. He also says, he used the phrase, Hedera is a next generation internet. And again, it's just being regrounded and reminded that, again, Leemon said, like, you want to be able to carve out your own piece of cyberspace or whatever. It's like, they also talk about Hedera being the plumbing of the internet. again, just getting back to basics. This was a really good segment for just getting back to basics on this stuff. He also said, actually, Brandon, the HBAR bull, he kind of rebounded off of what Rob was talking about. And he said something very interesting to me, just from his perspective as an investor, why invest in Hedera? He said, Hedera hits the theoretical limits of DLTs, right? What if there's another network that reaches these same limits? What if there's a competitor that in all technical aspects is just as good as Hedera? Again, hitting the nail on the head and bringing this back to basics. It is so hard to launch a network and even harder to get governance. And I think that that's the other component that we forget about often is the technology, the Hashgraph algorithm, the network is literally just half of the equation. The other half is the innovations in governance, the governing council, these companies coming together and taking true ownership of this network and stewarding it. So that's, again, I encourage people to go watch that segment. It was great. It was very grounding. And it was worth getting back to basics. It was worth remembering that really the coolest things about this network have been here since day one. They're still the coolest things. Fixed fees, ABFT, and all those different types of things. So important. So my goodness, this has been a show. And another week behind us, another week ahead. I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone listening live to the Twitter Spaces right now. Another huge shout out to everyone listening to the recording on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and an extra shout out to everyone making a donation to the show. If you have a moment and you're listening, please give the show a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps a lot. So the show was called They Probably Already Know. That's what I titled the show. And I don't think I need to talk about that too much. I think people get what I'm talking about. There's been so many different things this year, and especially right now in this last week or two, that you get the idea that more and more major players know about Hedera, but don't talk about it for whatever reason. And I'll give a great example. Perfect Ability earlier was talking about Mark Cuban and his conversations surrounding crypto, the space, the longevity and success of it, and the analogies with the dot-com bubble. And Mark Cuban knows about Hedera. And I'll give you two examples. An OG and main Hedera use case, Hala Systems, that deals in defense of, areas experiencing, war. Hala Systems leverages the Hedera network for different components. Mark Cuban that's one of his kind of portfolio companies. Another is a use case wherein the Dallas Mavericks and a couple other NBA teams would be tokenizing tickets. That was purported to leverage Hedera as well. So why doesn't Mark Cuban talk about Hedera publicly, right? And I think it's because people aren't ready for it. They're still trying to sell people on the idea of crypto, of NFTs, of blockchains. Heck, even Leemon uses the word blockchain. It's about the lexicon and vernacular of the general public of things that they understand. And I think that Hedera, being a third generation DLT, is very far removed from the concepts, the bare bone basics that we're trying to get people to understand. And I think that people that we look at, like Elon Musk, like these major founders, all these different things, they know about Hedera. They have to, because Leemon just on our interview to me tells me that working on DREC through Swirlds Labs, they're already talking to major companies, to other networks. Other networks are excited about the DREC product. That means that they're talking to literally Leemon. They're talking to Swirlds. There are ongoing conversations between the offices of Swirlds and other networks and other companies. So it would be really, it seems almost impossible that these people don't know about Hedera, right? On every front. It's safe to say that. What are the chances that they don't, right? They look into everything. And I think the question here isn't, why don't they know about Hedera? Why haven't they looked into it? All these different types of things. I think the question instead is there a good reason why they don't talk more publicly about Hashgraph as a technology and about Hedera? Is it to pump their bags, right? Are they trying to buy it and they don't want it to gain in popularity? I don't think that's the case. I think what it's more about is, does the topic of Hedera, and the topic surrounding Hashgraph, does it lend itself to the story that's being told about crypto to try to onboard the masses? No, I don't think so right now. I think it's very complex topics. It goes very deep. And I think that in Hedera's case, it's about the use cases, right? We talk about coupons. When coupons go live on Hedera, my mom will be using Hedera and she won't realize it when she's using a coupon to get, 25 cents off milk. There's going to be a way that things get going. And I think that's what it's about, is especially this week, and seeing the things that we've been seeing and my conversation with Leemon, it is clear that more people than we think know about Hedera Hashgraph. And the question isn't just, why aren't they talking about it? But the question is there a good reason why they aren't? What's the strategy here, right? If there is a superior technology, where does Hashgraph fit into this conversation? It gets my brain going. Just because I'll say it here, I just think they already know. They probably do. When you see Elon, when you see all these HBAR respond to Elon Musk like, check out Hedera, blah blah blah, it's like he already knows. Any tech CEO, Google's tech CEO, Google's on the governing council. People, like, come on, they know. And I want to learn more about what the thought process is about explaining crypto to people and how Hedera fits into it. It can't be as simple as they just want to pump their bags. It can't be. But it is as simple as they probably already know. And thank you for tuning into Hashgraph News and Rumors, episode 80, broadcast live on Twitter Spaces every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and made available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, every Monday. Get all the info you need about the show and listen to past episodes at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. Make sure to join the Hashgraph enthusiast Twitter community to share your insights, ask questions, and invite new friends. If you'd like to become a supporter of the show, feel free to send an HBAR donation to enthusiast.hbar using your Hedera wallet. The full HBAR address is in the show notes and in the spaces, or the Twitter thread pins at the top of the spaces. I just got to say, it makes my day. Like, I got a donation to the show for like 50 HBAR, and it was just like someone saying, I love the show, really love the episode. Like, that stuff just makes my day. And I want to come up with better, more creative ways to have participation in the show and support it. But I thought about that deeply. And I mean, for the time being, there's just something so delightful about, there's nothing. It's just simple. It's just an HBAR address, and you donate to the show if you'd like it to grow. I don't need the donations. I really want to continually make the show better. I mean, now it's on all major podcast platforms. There's now some equipment that I have to purchase. We've got the microphone. I have to get a mixing interface. I want to be doing some stuff. I want to sound better. I want to pump in cool stuff to the show. I don't want to use the lame built-in Twitter music, all that good stuff. And it just makes my day to just get those cool memos and those transactions on the Hashgraph of a little donation to the show. It's just awesome. I just love it. It's amazing. So I just want to keep it super simple. I want the community to dictate the growth of this show. It keeps growing. It's growing from hundreds of listeners to thousands. And I could go in head first and all those different types of things, but I just thought the easiest way for the community to communicate that they want more of the show is just sending some HBAR, because it means that I can use it to do more of the show. It just feels so simple and lightweight, and it's just easy peasy. So just wanted to say how much I appreciate it. Any donation matters. And to be honest, for me, it's just the memos are delightful. I mean, even just like sending an HBAR, just a cool message, it just makes my day. So really appreciate it, everybody. I'll see you live on Twitter Spaces next Sunday, again at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And for everyone listening now, as usual, if you see someone listening and you don't recognize their profile picture on Twitter Spaces, hit their profile now, give them a follow, send them a DM, ask them what they're up to. You definitely have something in common. You've been listening to me talk for 2 hours. So hit it up, make some new connections. That's what this is all about. And if you see somebody listening that you do know, that you haven't reached out to in a while, do it right now. Hit their profile picture and shoot them a DM, ask them what's new. I guarantee you they got something new going on. Do it. It's worth it. Trust me. That is the It's Brandon D community guarantee. You're going to have something cool happen if you make the effort and say hello to somebody today. That's what's going on. So huge shout out to everybody listening. Appreciate you guys. And just a quick thank you again to King Solomon for coming up on the show. Perfect ability with the Reddit report. Pluto from HashPack. I think that's everybody. Just awesome stuff. Thanks so much. Hello, future. Goodbye, past.